She handed me divorce papers the month after graduation. 10 years later she came crawling back, but this time I held all the cards. The manila envelope felt heavier than it should have. Megan placed it on our kitchen table with the same clinical precision she used when handling medical charts, her freshly manicured fingers, a luxury I'd helped pay for, drumming against the wood. "What's this?" I asked, though something in my gut already knew. "Divorce papers." Her voice was steady, professional. The same tone she'd probably use to deliver bad news to a patient's family. "I've changed, Jerry. We're on different paths now." I stared at the envelope, my mind struggling to process her words. Different paths? After everything we'd built together? After 7 years of me being her foundation while she climbed toward her dreams? "That's it." My voice cracked. "That's all you're going to say?" She adjusted her stethoscope, still wearing it like a trophy even at home, and looked past me toward the window. "What else is there to say?" Everything. I wanted to scream. But instead I just nodded and reached for a pen. The beginning, when love felt like an investment. My name's Jerry, and back in my early 20s I thought I had it all figured out. While my friends were struggling through entry-level jobs or drowning in post-college confusion, I was already running my own computer hardware store. It wasn't glamorous, cramped aisles, fluctuating profit margins, and the constant stress of keeping up with rapidly changing technology, but it was mine. The money mattered because I'd built everything from scratch. No family wealth, no trust fund, just determination and 18-hour workdays. Every small victory felt earned. I met Megan during her undergraduate years at a coffee shop near campus. She was hunched over textbooks, highlighter in hand, muttering medical terminology under her breath. When she looked up and caught me staring, her smile was radiant. "Pre-med?" I asked, sliding into the seat across from her. "Future surgeon," she corrected, her eyes lighting up. "I've wanted this since I was 8 years old." That passion was intoxicating. Here was someone with clear direction, unwavering focus, and the kind of drive that made dreams reality. When she talked about her future, the lives she'd save, the difference she'd make, I felt privileged just to witness her ambition. Our relationship deepened quickly. Late-night study sessions turned into intimate conversations about our futures. She'd describe her medical school applications while I shared my business expansion plans. We were young, optimistic, and convinced we were building something permanent together. "I'm worried about the debt," she confided one evening, surrounded by MCAT prep books. "Medical school is expensive and I don't want to graduate owing 6 figures." "Don't worry about money," I said, taking her hand. "I've got you covered." It seemed like the most natural thing in the world. I was making decent money, she was going to be a doctor, and we were a team. In my mind, supporting her education was an investment in our shared future. The sacrifice years, building her dreams on my foundation. When Megan's medical school acceptance letter arrived, we celebrated like we'd won the lottery. In many ways we had. But as I watched her tears of joy, I felt something deeper than happiness. I felt ownership. This wasn't just her victory, it was ours. We married 6 months later in a small ceremony that reflected our practical nature rather than any fairy tale fantasies. Simple vows, close family, and a future that seemed inevitable. Medical school changed everything. Megan's days became a blur of lectures, laboratory work, and clinical rotations. She'd leave before dawn and return after midnight, often sleeping at the hospital or crashing at classmates' apartments to save commute time. When she was home, she was present in body only, her mind constantly cycling through diagnoses, treatment protocols, and exam preparations. "I'm sorry, I'm so tired," she'd mumble, collapsing into bed fully clothed. "This rotation is killing me." "It's temporary," I'd whisper back, helping her out of her scrubs. "Once you graduate, we'll have time for us again." But temporary stretched into years. The financial pressure was relentless. Tuition, books, equipment, board exam fees, every semester brought new expenses. My business was doing well, but supporting 2 people while one contributed nothing financially was challenging. I started working longer hours, taking on additional clients, and deferring my own expenses to ensure Megan had everything she needed. "You don't have to do this," she'd say half-heartedly when I handed her money for another textbook or conference fee. Yes, I do, I'd reply. We're in this together. I believed that completely. Every sacrifice felt like an investment in our future happiness. I envisioned the day she'd graduate, establish her practice, and we'd look back on these lean years as proof of our commitment to each other. During her clinical rotations, Megan began changing in subtle ways. Her conversations shifted from medical concepts to hospital politics, which attendings drove luxury cars, which residents came from wealthy families, which specialties offered the highest earning potential. Dr. Harrison bought a new BMW, she mentioned casually one evening. He's only been practicing for 3 years. That's nice, I replied, not really listening while balancing our monthly budget. Did you know plastic surgeons can make over $500,000 annually? These comments became more frequent. She'd describe lavish vacations her colleagues took, expensive restaurants they frequented, designer clothes they wore. Meanwhile, I was clipping coupons and buying generic groceries to stretch our income. When I tried discussing our future, starting a family, buying a house, planning beyond her residency, Megan's responses became increasingly vague. Let's focus on getting through school first, she'd say, dismissing conversations about children with a wave of her hand. But she had plenty of energy to discuss her career trajectory, potential fellowship opportunities, and the lifestyle she planned to maintain as a practicing physician. Graduation day, the beginning of the end. Megan's graduation ceremony was everything I'd imagined. Watching her walk across that stage in her cap and gown, knowing the role I'd played in making that moment possible, filled me with overwhelming pride. I cheered louder than anyone else, took dozens of photos, and felt like we'd conquered the world together. We did it, I whispered as she posed for pictures afterward, her diploma clutched triumphantly. I did it, she corrected, then quickly added, but thank you for your support. The distinction stung, but I brushed it off. She was exhausted, overwhelmed with achievement, probably just misspeaking. Her residency began immediately, bringing new challenges but also her first real paycheck in years. Finally, we could breathe financially. Finally, we could start planning our life together. That optimism lasted exactly 3 weeks. I need to talk to you, Megan announced one evening, setting down her medical bag with unusual formality. I looked up from my laptop where I'd been researching vacation destinations, somewhere we could finally celebrate her accomplishment and reconnect as a couple. She handed me the manila envelope. The aftermath, rebuilding from ruins. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. My lawyer explained the harsh reality. Unless I had documentation proving the money I'd given Megan was a loan rather than a gift, I had little legal recourse. You supported her out of love, he said sympathetically. Unfortunately, love doesn't translate well in family court. The judge acknowledged my sacrifices but was bound by law. I received a minimal settlement, barely enough to cover my legal fees, let alone compensate for years of financial and emotional investment. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt hollowed out. Not just financially but spiritually. The person I'd loved, supported, and believed in had discarded me the moment I was no longer useful. The months following our divorce were the darkest of my life. I questioned everything, my judgment, my capacity for love, my understanding of human nature. Depression settled over me like fog, making even simple tasks feel insurmountable. But gradually, anger replaced despair. And anger, I discovered, was useful. I threw myself into work with renewed intensity. Not from passion but from necessity. I needed to rebuild everything I'd lost. My business expanded. I developed new revenue streams, hired employees, and slowly climbed back to financial stability. More importantly, I rebuilt my sense of self. The naive romantic who'd signed away his future for love was gone, replaced by someone harder, smarter, and significantly more careful. I made a promise to myself: never again would I legally bind my life to another person. Marriage, I now understood, was a contract that could be weaponized by those willing to exploit it. When I eventually started dating again, I was upfront about my boundaries. No marriage. No joint finances. No sacrificing my stability for someone else's dreams. Most women weren't interested in that arrangement. Some thought I was damaged, others believed they could change my mind. But eventually I found someone who understood, a woman who'd been through her own betrayals and appreciated a partner who valued independence alongside companionship. Sarah didn't need me to complete her, she chose to be with me. That distinction made all the difference. 10 years later, the reckoning. The Facebook message notification appeared on a quiet Tuesday evening. Megan's name on my screen felt surreal, like seeing a ghost from a life I'd deliberately forgotten. "Hey, how have you been?" I stared at those 5 words for several minutes before responding. A decade of healing, growth, and intentional distance reduced to casual small talk. Our conversation started innocuously. She asked about my business, mentioned seeing something online that reminded her of me, shared generic updates about her life. But I could sense the real purpose lurking beneath her pleasantries. "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately," she wrote after several exchanges. "I miss what we had. Despite everything, I still believe we had something real." There it was, the opening gambit in whatever game she was playing. "You were the most stable man I've ever been with," she continued. "I admired how you always stood by me through medical school. I realize now how rare that kind of support is." The audacity was breathtaking. She was reframing our history, casting herself as someone who'd simply made a mistake rather than someone who'd coldly calculated her exit strategy. "What do you want, Megan?" I typed. Her response came quickly, as if she'd been waiting for the question. "I always thought you didn't get married again because deep down you were waiting for me." I actually laughed out loud. After all these years, her worldview still placed her at the center of everyone else's story. She couldn't fathom that I might have healed, grown, and built something better without her. "You assumed wrong," I replied. But I didn't block her. Not yet. Over the following weeks, I learned about her post-divorce life through a combination of her oversharing and some discreet investigation. The picture that emerged was satisfying in its irony. After leaving me, Megan had pursued the lifestyle she'd always craved, dating successful men, enjoying expensive dinners and exotic vacations, living the high-end existence she'd glimpsed during her medical training. But those relationships were purely transactional. The men she attracted were interested in short-term fun, not long-term commitment. Eventually she'd married again, this time to a man who earned significantly less than her physician's salary. The relationship was a disaster. He cheated repeatedly, often with women half her age, and when their marriage imploded, she found herself paying him alimony. The woman who'd left me saying we were on different paths had ended up financially supporting a man who betrayed her at every turn. Justice, it seemed, didn't always require intervention. Playing her game, the sweet revenge. As Megan's messages became more frequent and desperate, I made a decision. I wouldn't shut her down immediately, that would be too merciful. Instead, I'd give her a taste of her own medicine. I became strategically responsive. Not eager, not dismissive, but frustratingly neutral. When she asked if I was seeing anyone, I'd respond with, "It's complicated." When she suggested meeting for coffee, I'd say, "Maybe soon." When she reminisced about our past, I'd offer minimal acknowledgement. I was giving her exactly what she'd given me during the final years of our marriage, just enough attention to maintain hope, but never enough to feel secure. "I don't want to do life alone," she wrote one evening. "It's scary thinking about retirement and not having someone there. You were always the steady one." The vulnerability was calculated but also genuine. She was aging alone, and beginning to realize that the stability she discarded might have been more valuable than the excitement she'd pursued. For months I let her chase shadows. Every dry response, every delayed message, every hint of possibility followed by distance was deliberate. She was experiencing the same emotional confusion I'd felt when she'd mentally checked out of our marriage while still physically present. Then one morning I decided to end the charade. "Our divorce wasn't the end of something good," I wrote. "It was the start of something necessary. Losing you forced me to face myself, to rebuild, to grow. I found peace, and I have no interest in reopening doors that life has already shut for good." Her response was immediate and explosive. First came guilt. How could I be so cruel after everything we'd shared? Then accusations. I was no better than the men who'd hurt her after me. Finally, desperation disguised as anger. When reasoning failed, she escalated to harassment. Messages at all hours, posts designed to get my attention, attempts to involve mutual friends in her narrative of victimhood. She even contacted Sarah, subtly implying that I'd been emotionally unfaithful. That's when I knew this had moved beyond emotional confusion into dangerous territory. I did what she probably never expected from the soft-hearted man she'd once married. I lawyered up. A cease and desist letter delivered by certified mail formally warned her to stop all contact or face legal consequences. Then I blocked her everywhere. Closure. The man I became. Sitting in my office afterward, I reflected on what had just transpired. 10 years ago, Megan had taught me that love without boundaries is just exploitation waiting to happen. Her return had given me an opportunity to demonstrate how thoroughly I'd learned that lesson. I felt no guilt about playing with her emotions. She'd earned every moment of confusion and rejection I'd served her. The naive young man who'd signed those divorce papers without a fight was gone, replaced by someone who understood that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is refuse to be kind to those who've abused your kindness. Today, I'm in a relationship built on mutual respect rather than financial dependency. Sarah and I maintain separate accounts, split expenses fairly, and support each other's goals without sacrificing our individual identities. We're partners by choice, not necessity, a distinction that makes our connection infinitely more valuable than the legal contract I'd once thought defined commitment. Megan's chapter is permanently closed, but the lessons she taught me, albeit unintentionally, continue to serve me well. Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate schemes or public humiliation. It's simply becoming so successful and content that your former tormentor's return to your life feels more like an inconvenience than an opportunity. She wanted stability, support, and unconditional love when it suited her purposes. But those gifts aren't returnable once broken. I learned to offer them more carefully, and in return I found something she never provided: peace. The divorce papers she handed me that day weren't just the end of our marriage, they were the beginning of my real life. And for that unintended gift, I suppose I should thank her. But I won't.